Hey guys, I didn't put the starting stream on. I kind of went right into it. I'm trying to get everything set up. Um, I know it's not exactly 4 o'clock yet, so I'm not going to start quite yet, but you guys can just watch me if you want. Do, 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 do. I know you guys miss. I'm going to put a little music on while we're waiting. Let's see here. As you guys are coming in, if you need the lesson sent to you, just let me know and I'll email it. Yeah, you did miss it, Javon. Sorry, man. I will be uploading it to YouTube in a bit, or you can just check it out right here on Twitch. What is this? Emily is waiting. Did you jump into my Twitch, Emily? Are you in here right now? Did you just try joining the Zoom? I'm just checking. I got an email and it said Emily, but I didn't actually like read to see if it was you or not. Oh, Javon, I started like 2 minutes late today. I think I jumped on at like 3:01, 3:02. Sorry, man. Clicked on the link you sent and had no idea. I'll explain it a little bit. I'll just wait till there's a few more people in here. Alright. Just checking a couple emails. I'll get the iTunes all set up. Again, as you guys are coming in, if you guys need the lesson sent, just give me the heads up so I can send it your way. Hey, what's going on, Chris? Hannah, if you're talking about the Zoom, you don't need an email or anything to connect. You just have to be able to get the app. So if you can download the app on your phone, I don't even think you have to create an account because a lot of the people that were joining earlier didn't have one. Let's see here. All the music that you guys are hearing right now are the classics from when I grew up. Until I get banned for playing songs I don't have copyrights to. Yeah, I'll talk about it. Actually, you know what? I'll probably start going into it right now. So, if you use a computer like I do, all you have to do is click the link. Yeah. So, like Emily was just saying, if you guys are reading the chat, so the way Zoom works, so Zoom is set up where it's very similar to what we're doing right now, except if you guys wanted to actually talk to me, there is an audio portion to it. So, you can connect on your phone, you can connect from your personal computer or iPad at home, but currently, your school iPads don't have Zoom yet. We're waiting for Kempster and Chad to send it from the tech office for you guys. Once you guys are able to actually connect to it, um, it will do like a webcam very similar to what I have right on here, and we can actually talk in real time. So there's no delay, there's nothing. I'm going to use that for office hours. When you guys have homework questions, you can come in and ask. I'm going to continue using Twitch for every lesson that we still do for however long this goes on for. And the reason why is because if we have too many people trying to talk at once, it's going to become too distracting. So I'll talk more about the Zoom. I'm going to have another office hour tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So if you guys stop by at that 1 o'clock hour, I'll try to help you guys get set up on Zoom if you have a personal device. If you're looking to do it on your iPad, I cannot do it with you until the app is going to be on your iPad. Okay? But like Emily said, if you're doing it on your own computer, you just have to click on the link that I sent you and it will just open right up. And then you'll be able to jump right in. It will work with your video or your camera on your device. You don't have to have the camera turned on. You can turn it off and you can just ask questions with your voice and that's it. But all right, let's see here. I just added the Shobi and now I'm just opening it up on the iPad so we can get started. So yeah, if you guys had questions on homework number 1, you're more than welcome to still come in during office hour. You can still email me like normal. Let's see here. But lesson 2 that we're going into, I think a lot of you guys are going to feel pretty comfortable with it because is it going to connect? Oh, hold on one second. Technical difficulties on my end. I have to open it back up and then we can get going. Yeah, I got 2 problems I'm going to do with you. One, both of them are going to be using, I believe, quadratic formula today. So we're going to do a review with the quadratic, and then we're going to do some review with completing the square tomorrow. Or I'm saying it backwards. Yep, I did it backwards. Today will be completing the square. Tomorrow will be quadratic formula. So I put one question for the warm-up, very similar to what we did yesterday. So that's this giant fraction. So I was going to walk you guys through it just in case if some of you guys didn't finish the homework and you noticed that you were having trouble on this fraction one. This one's very similar to it. So when we did this one yesterday, if you look at that top portion of the fraction, what you're looking to do is you want to GCF it. You want to find what's in common. So when you go to do that, you just have to look at this as 2 different pieces. So that's the left side. This is the right side. You're just looking to see if there's anything in common. So as of right now, there's a 3 and a 2 as your coefficients, and 3 and 2 don't have anything in common other than 1, so we don't have to worry about those. However, if you look at the next part, that x minus 2, the first part has x minus 2 squared, and the second one just has 1x minus 2. So technically, we can pull an x minus 2 to the outside because there is 1 in common for both. We can do the same thing for the x plus 1s. If you look at the first part, you have 2x plus 1s. And if you look at the second one, you have 3x plus 1s. So we know that we have 2 of them in common. And that just means that we can pull 2 of them to the outside. Because there is nothing else in common, all we have to do is write what's left over. So I'm just going to put a big parenthesis, and we just have to write everything left on the inside. So this first part still has a 3. It still has 1x minus 2 left over because we only took 1 to the outside. And that's it because we took the x plus 1s out. I still have a minus 2 because we never brought the 2 to the outside. And then we pulled 1x minus 2 out, so that's gone. But we're still left with an x plus 1. As far as the bottom goes, it just stays the same. So the bottom is still going to be x minus 2 to the 4th and x plus 1 squared. But because we did GCF, now we can just look to see if there's anything that could cancel out. So we're just looking to see if there's anything that's exactly the same on top and bottom that's on the outside that could be canceled. And if you take a look at this, we do have some stuff. The easiest part to look at is the x plus 1 squared and the x plus 1 squared. Since that is on top and bottom, both of those cancel out. as far as the x minus 2's go, we only have one in common. So when we go to cancel those out, you just got to be careful. Since I'm only canceling one out on the top, I'm only allowed to cancel one out on the bottom. So I still have some x minus 2's. It's just going to be to the third power. So now I'm just going to write down what's left over, and we got our answer. So let's see here. I'll pick some green. So I still have what's inside those parentheses. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to distribute it. And just so there's no confusion, these x plus 1 squareds did cancel out. So I'm actually going to distribute what's on the inside. So I had 3 times x minus 2, which is really just 3x minus 6. And we have a negative 2 times x plus 1, which would be a negative 2x minus 2. All over. The only thing that we're left with on the bottom is x minus 2 to the third power. And then the very last step, just combine like terms on the top, and you should be good to go. So I got an x left over on the top, and I have minus 8 on the top. All over x minus 2 cubed. We're good to go. That would be our final answer. This one is very similar to the one homework question on number 1. So if you want to take a look at that and check it out, you can. Everything's blowing up right now. I'm getting emails. I'm getting texts. Oh, it's just my wife texting me. All right. So is there any questions with that one? Hopefully, if you guys couldn't make it to the office hour earlier, this will help you out on that one question on the second page of the homework. I'm going to do a vote right now. Do you guys want to do completing the square today, or do you guys want to do quadratic formula today? Either one. I'll give you guys a second. First person to respond in chat, that's the one I'm doing. So completing the square, quadratic formula. Nobody's going to respond, are you? You guys are all going to be bums. Well, if nobody's going to respond, then I'm just going to stick right with the first page, and I'll do completing the square. So, completing the square, you guys may also remember it as the plus blank method. So, first thing that we got to look at is taking a look at if you try to factor this, first of all, I'm going to ask you guys to factor because we need to solve it. And if you try to factor this, you guys should notice that 2, 12, and 10 all have a 2 in common. So I could pull a 2 to the outside. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pull a 2 to the outside, and we're going to be left with x squared minus 6x minus 5. Now, we're just looking to solve it. So if I wanted to get rid of that 2, technically I can get rid of that 2 by just dividing both sides by 2. Because we're solving, that's okay. If that equals 0 wasn't there, then we're not allowed to do this. But because it's equal to 0, we can just cancel them out, and we're left with x squared minus 6x minus 5 is equal to 0. So I'll try to write down the steps with you guys as we go through it, just so you guys get some practice with it. When we did completing the square, we called it plus blank. The first step that you guys had to do was move C to the other side. And I'll explain what that means in a second. So remember when we worked with these coefficients, you had an A, a B, and a C value. And it only worked with those numbers. So the original A, B, and C was 2, 12, and 10. But as you guys can see, when we took out that 2, those numbers changed. So A is really just 1, B is really negative 6, and C is really negative 5. So we just have to move C over to the other side. So I have x squared minus 6x. I'm going to leave a little space between that 6x and the equal sign. And if I were to move the negative 5 to the other side, it's going to become a plus 5. After you guys move that C over, the second step, you guys had to put in your plus blank. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to factor that left side so it is a perfect square. This is why we call it completing the square. We want to try to factor out the left side, so you're going to get two bubbles that are exactly the same. So when we go to do this, we want two of the same bubbles. And there's a quick trick to figuring this out. So I'm going to put in my x's because we're factoring this. And the only thing you guys can factor to get x squared is this x and this x. Now to figure out the second numbers, all you guys have to do is take that middle number and split it up into two equal parts. Well, if you take -6 and you split it in half, it's got to be 3. Those are two equal numbers. Because the -6 was negative, then the two signs are going to be negative because they have to be the same in order to complete the square. Now, the reason why I did it this way, I haven't shown you what the blank is yet. In order to find the blank, you're just going to take those two -3s and multiply them together. Because remember, when we look for the C value in a trinomial, it's just the two numbers multiplied. -3 times -3 is really just going to be 9. So now we have our blanks. So this was called completing the square. So now the third step is factor the left and simplify the right. Well, we already have the left side factored because we said it was x minus 3 times x minus 3. Those are perfect squares. They're exactly the same. On the right side, we'll have 5 plus 9, which is 14. Well, an easier way to write down x minus 3, since we have two of them, you can just say this is x minus 3 squared. One last step that you guys have to do is now we just have to solve. I'm going to have to shrink my stuff. I was writing too big. So there's only two more steps that we need to do here to solve it because our goal is to get x all by itself. So you guys just have to remember, if you have a squared, in order to get rid of a squared, we're going to square root. So I'm square rooting both sides. Well, if you have a square root and a squared, those are going to cancel out, and you're left with x minus 3. And the other thing you got to be careful with is just remember, anytime you square root, there's two solutions. In front of that square root, you got to put in plus or minus. So the last step, you just got to get x all by itself, and the only way you can get that 3 over to the other side is by adding it. So you're going to have x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 14. Once you guys get there, there's nothing else that we can do because it can't be simplified down anymore. Square root of 14 is already in simplest form. You guys can't do a factor tree. You can't break down 14 because it'll be 7 and 2, and you're going to have nothing in common. Okay? Does completing the square look familiar? I don't want to give you guys, what I'm trying to do for these upcoming weeks, a lot of the questions I'm going to give you guys are really just going to be based on review. I know we're saying we're going into new stuff, but a lot of the stuff we're going to do is just going to be review stuff. And unfortunately, the way this worked out, I couldn't really do like all that real like pre-college stuff. We did some of the limits. I wanted to get into some calculus stuff with you guys because I know some of you are going to be forced to take calculus in college, but it's going to be too difficult to try to teach you guys on the internet. It'll be a little bit easier if we were in person. So if we're fortunate enough to be back to school before the end of the year, then maybe I might jump back into that. But I don't want to do that to you guys. I want to try to make stuff as easy as possible for you right now. I'm going to skip over number 2. Number 2 is solving it with no numbers. And like I said, it's not something I want to do with you guys over the internet. So I just want you to flip to the back page. And we're going to go all the way down to question number 4. Because we're only doing completing the square today. I'll do question 4 and then we'll call it quits. Okay? So, this one is going to be a little ugly, and I did it that way on purpose to show you guys that completing the square is not always going to be perfect, and it may not always be the option that you guys want to use. So if you guys go to number 4, what I always suggest doing is taking your question and always setting it equal to 0 first before you do anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is just rewrite this equation. So it's 9x squared. I'm going to move the 18x and the 79 to the left side. So I'm going to add the 18x over, and I'm going to add the 79 over. From here, I highly do not recommend solving completing the square unless x squared is equal to 1. And that is what we did on the other page. If you recall, we divided everything by 2. So on this page, we're just going to divide everything by 9. And maybe I'm going to rewrite it. We're going to divide everything by 9. I'll write it out this way so you guys see that we're dividing every single thing by 9. So this one's going to be a little ugly because we're going to have a fraction involved in this one because not everything works out nicely. So if you look at the first one, the 9's will cancel out and you're left with x squared. You're going to have plus 2x. But if you guys go to do 79 divided by 9, you're going to notice that you're going to get 8.7 repeating, which if I try to rewrite that as an improper fraction, it comes out to be 79 over 9. I recommend not changing this to decimal, because if you change it to decimal, you're going to struggle a little bit in finding your answer. So I'm just going to put down plus 79 over 9. And then the last part, 0 divided by anything, is still going to be 0. Now I'm going to follow the same exact steps that I just did on the front page. I'm just not going to rewrite them. So the first step is to move the c value over to the other side. So I'm just going to move that 79 over 9 over to the other side, and I'm going to leave a little blank on that right side. On the left side, because the very next step is to figure out what that blank is going to be. So in order to find the blank, what my recommendation is figure out what the factors are going to be before you do the blank. Because if you can figure out the factors, the blank becomes much, much easier. There's no formula you have to memorize if you could figure out what's going to make them exactly the same. So if I look at that left side, I again know it has to be x and x. Well, again, you're trying to make them the same, so you just take that middle number of 2 and split it in half. So since it is a 2, if I want to split 2 in half, it's got to be 1 and 1. Well, and then because that 2 was positive, that means our answers have to be positive. So now if I want to find that blank, I'm just going to multiply those two 1s together, and 1 times 1 is 1. Whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other side. So now I just got to figure out what negative 79 over 9, and because we got a calculator, I'm going to make life a little bit easier. Negative 79 over 9 plus 1 is going to be negative 7. Well, obviously, because we just added 1 to that 8.77. But let's figure out what that's going to be as an improper fraction. So that's just saying it's negative 70 over 9. Just like the front page, there's an easier way to write x plus 1 times x plus 1. Since we got 2 of them, we're just going to write it squared. Okay. Well, now that I have that written out, just like the front page, you have to get x all by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that squared. So I'm just going to square root both sides. What color have I not used? Green? again, remember, anytime you square root, two solutions. So I'm going to draw a little arrow up here. Let me get rid of the calculator so you guys can see everything. So I'm going to draw a little arrow up here to continue on the problem. I'm going to be left with an x plus 1 on the left. And I'm going to be having that plus or minus the square root of negative 70 over 9. Now I have to get x all by itself, so I just have to move the 1 over to the other side. So in order to move the 1 over, I'm subtracting it, and I'm going to be left with x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 70 over 9. If you get it to there, I'm happy, because you walk through the steps of completing the square. I'm going to still show it in the most simplified form, and then I'm going to call it quits for today. So technically that square root can be simplified down a little bit more. So that's what I'm going to just branch off and show. If you were to branch this down anymore, I'm going to have x equals negative 1 plus or minus. Technically, when you have the square root of negative 70 over 9, that's the same thing as saying the square root of negative 70 over the square root of 9. And now you guys should notice you can do the square root of one of those. And it's that bottom portion, because the square root of 9 is really just going to be 3. As far as the top goes, the reason why I didn't rewrite it is there's something that we did earlier this year. You cannot have negatives inside of a square root. So we said anytime that we do the square root of a negative number, it's really going to be imaginary. So we really have to write an I on the outside. And then we'll still have the square root of 70. I'm going to save time and just tell you guys, if you try to break 70 down, if you try to do the factor tree off to the side, it would be 7 times 10, which would be 7 times 5 times 2. There are no pairs. So this would be in its simplest form for completing the square. Okay? So this right here would be that final solution. Okay? So as far as the lesson goes, that's it. So I'll pause for a second. I'll see if anybody's got a question. While you guys are pondering that, because I know of the delay, I'm going to just kind of go through, take a look at the homework and show you guys that everything that's going on in these homeworks are going to be pretty much similar to previous lessons. There's a couple new ones. I didn't really do a lot of new stuff on this one. A lot of the stuff you're going to notice came from lesson 1. You're going to see some questions that look very similar. I'm trying to keep everything review for you guys. Pretty much the whole first page is that first lesson. Second page, you could see there's another fraction one. 8 and 9 is going into some factoring. And then when you get down to 10, first of all, let me just do something. I'm not going to do summations with you guys, so you could cross off number 11. Don't worry about number 11. If you guys talk to anybody that was not here for the video, just make sure they're aware that they do not have to do number 11. And from what I can see, I didn't even put a completing the square on here, but it's still good to talk about because we will be doing some completing the squares in the upcoming lessons. Hannah, like I've been trying to say, there's no like real due date. I put it into Shobi. I think it says April 1st in Shobi. As far as the guideline goes, I would say probably 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So it's usually, I'm going to make a homework due every other day. I'm never going to make it due the same day we do a lesson because I know you guys have other stuff going on. A lot of you guys have been pretty good about this though, and you've been turning in the homeworks like instantly. So if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. Just plug it right in there. I haven't started grading any of the homeworks you guys have plugged into Shobi yet, just because I have a lot going on as far as the technology portion. I'm trying to figure out which students need it, which students don't, and I'm just kind of going on from there. Okay. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope everybody's good still. I I was actually just down in Silver Creek again. I think I don't know if Sam's in here or if Sam's working. I just saw her up at Rite Aid, um, but I wasn't able to stop out anywhere else. So, but I'm just gonna end it there. I hope you guys have an awesome evening. Don't be afraid to email me. My email's been blowing up for the last couple of days, and that's great. Stay in contact with me. I just want to make sure you guys are all good. Uh, Stop by office hours tomorrow at 1 if you want to learn how to use Zoom. Okay. So, otherwise, I'll catch you guys later. Have fun. Miss y'all. Bye.